to do that. The so-called Epstein victims who have received over $100 million.
So-called Epstein victims. We should call that out for what that is. That's a bullshit.
No, it's not. They are saying that they are Epstein victims and they have been paid. They can come out and say, no one is stopping them. I would welcome them. I would encourage them. Come out and tell us.
Well, actually, quite a few. Okay, but Clay, quite a few are beginning to do that. Quite a few are beginning to do that. So it's going to be interesting how many more follow that path.
You heard that correctly. So-called victims, not a misquote, not taken out of context. That was deliberate. And the second he said it, the entire energy of the room shifted. Because when defending power becomes more important than defending victims, people notice. This wasn't just a debate moment. This was a mask-off moment. Watch how the panel reacts. And as you do, ask yourself one question. Is this accountability or is this protection? Let me know what you think as we get into it.
Well, let's hear now from my panel. Isaiah Martin is a Democrat congressional candidate in Texas who has just gone viral after taking on 20 Republicans in this week's Jubilee. Mike Nellis is host of Endless Urgency, the strategist behind White Dudes for Harris. And Clay Travis is founder of Outkick. And Tyrus is on his way and will be joining us very soon. Okay, just first of all, Clay Travis, let's just talk about this Epstein scandal. Because it is completely bizarre sitting here in London, watching people go down like dominoes. And these are not insignificant figures. You've got the former Prince Andrew in line to the throne of the UK, obviously. You've got Lord Mandelson, who was a UK ambassador to the United States. He's gone. They've both been completely torched as a consequence of what's emerged about them in these files. But we're not seeing that in America. Why are we not? And do you want us to?
Well, I think, first of all, there should be people bearing consequences who were involved in actually some sort of activity with girls alongside of Epstein. And I think you have seen a lot of Americans lose their jobs. I mean, the head of one of the biggest law firms in the United States lost his job. You've seen people in media lose jobs recently that they've gotten. But I think also people are looking at some of the details and saying there's a difference. For instance, Howard Lutnick's being attacked right now, and you can criticize him for continuing to interact with Jeffrey Epstein, certainly. But he went to Epstein Island with his wife and a bunch of kids on a cruise trip to the Caribbean. And so all connections are not the exact same. I think what you're actually seeing in the United States is there's being a lot of discernment as to what was going on. I'll also add in, there's so much volume here that I do think a lot of people are just frankly overwhelmed with the 3 million different documents that are out there and all the different names that are flooding the zone. I think there's some degree of people just being overwhelmed with the sheer amount of people that were involved here across all the landscape. And so, again, I think there's some discernment when it comes to actual interaction. Are these business partners? Are these people who were involved with women or not? Are these people that may have even gone to the island, as I said, in the case of Howard Lutnick, and done so with their wife and with their kids, which I think is quite a lot different than the crimes that Epstein was accused of committing.
Okay, Mike Nellis, I mean, notwithstanding, a lot of what Clay said there, I'm sure is right, but people want accountability. And as I said to Congresswoman Mace, the fact that there are going to be more than 3 million documents from the Epstein files that apparently are not going to be made public strikes me as absolutely staggering. And of course, that's going to do nothing but inflame all the raging conspiracy theories.
I think that's absolutely right, is people should be incredibly angry that nobody is being prosecuted for this. And let's be clear about what's happening here. The Department of Justice under Donald Trump and Pam Bondi are covering this up. Let's not forget that in July, over the July 4th weekend, they told us that this investigation was over and that there was nothing there. How many times do we have to hear that Donald Trump isn't in the Epstein files, then we find out he's in there a million times? How many times do we have to listen to guys like Howard Lutnick say, I met Jeffrey Epstein once and then it turns out he was a creep and I wasn't there? You keep unwinding this stuff and you find that these guys have been lying for so long. So the reason there isn't accountability either criminally or just in polite society like Nancy Mace talked about earlier is because Donald Trump is at the heart of this because these guys are covering it up. Howard Letnick says, I didn't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein. He only lived next door to the guy, started a business with the guy, and brought his kids, which to me is disgusting, on a trip to Epstein Island after it was already known that the guy was a registered sex offender. Donald Trump is out there saying, I didn't know anything about Jeffrey Epstein and what he was doing, except he was talking about it. He partied with the guy. He met his wife, his current wife, at an Epstein party. Not to mention the fact that he's mentioned the files over 1 million times. So it's embarrassing to me. And to your point, Piers, all over Europe, people are having their careers destroyed because of their relationship with a guy who is a registered sex offender who trafficked kids. And that's not happening in the United States. And it's embarrassing when MAGA bootlickers come on and defend this stuff because it's an 80-20 issue to the vast majority of Americans who are pissed. Kids were abused here. We got to take this seriously.
We have, but Isaiah Martin, I mean, you know,
well, the government hasn't. You're taking it seriously, Piers, which I appreciate.
What crimes specifically should be charged?
Well, at a bare minimum, we know that there were kids that were trafficked. How is it possible that Ghislaine Maxwell is the only person that's ever going to be prosecuted for that?
Well, because she trafficked. I mean, if you read the indictment,
she trafficked them by herself. Is your position? Wait, hold on, Clay. Is your position that Ghislaine Maxwell trafficked these kids by herself?
She trafficked them for Jeffrey Epstein. That is what the charges
but by
show.
herself, nobody else helped. There were 1,000 little boys and 1,000 little girls that were trafficked on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein by Ghislaine Maxwell. But is she the only one who did it?
That is not accurate based on the evidence. I just asked a simple question. You want people prosecuted. Who should be prosecuted and what should they be charged with?
Yeah, I want the 6 co-conspirators to be prosecuted for trafficking little kids.
Okay,
and I want the rest of these people. Hold on, Clay. I'm answering your question.
I'm a lawyer, so this matters to me. When you say people should be charged, and when you
human
say
trafficking is a crime, you might want to check your penal code.
Charged, who and with what crimes? Let me also ask you this, as we lead into that: why did Joe Biden not charge anybody? Why did Barack Obama not charge anybody? Do you think the only thing that Democrats and Republicans agree on is that Jeffrey Epstein should be protected and everybody else around him should be protected? Look. The reality here, in my opinion, is if you actually look at the evidence that came out, Trump in 2006 said, thank the Lord, basically, I'm paraphrasing, in the actual Epstein files in 2006, that you were able to charge this guy. We all knew that things were going on that were inappropriate. You can't go after Donald Trump on this at all. Do you really think that Joe Biden
hold on. Let's talk about that for a second.
Evidence that Trump committed crimes when he tried to imprison him for the rest of his life over bogus charges in New York City, when he tried to put him in prison, bankrupt him? You think he's set on Epstein?
Right.
This just doesn't add up. So again, I circle back to the basic question. Who should be charged and what should they be charged with based on your reading of the evidence? Specifically, tell me.
So this is a clever trick that these MAGA influencers like to do, is that they want to blame this on Joe Biden.
How is it a clever trick?
Hey, Clay, let me finish my point. Hold on, and then you can tell me why I'm wrong. But let me finish my point.
I said
I answered your question already, Clay, but you keep interrupting me. All right, listen.
So
this is what they want to do.
Tell us what the charges should be.
This entire thing is a failure of multiple administrations. There are Democrats and Republicans in the file. And the bottom line here is that there's an Epstein class and its defenders like Clay, and there's everybody else. And so right now, they're defending Donald Trump, who has been covering this up. There are 6 co-conspirators.
Clay, there are 6. Everybody should be charged with crimes.
No, that's not what I said, Clay. There are 6.
You can't even give me a name or a crime.
Let's pause right there, because this is the pattern every single time. Notice what just happened. The moment accountability is mentioned, the conversation gets redirected. Why didn't Biden? Why didn't Obama? That's not transparency, that's deflection. And viewers can see it. You can see it. Here's the core issue. Trump publicly promised transparency on the Epstein files. His allies promised transparency. Drain the swamp. Expose the elite. Those were the slogans. So when people ask for exactly what was promised, why does it suddenly become unreasonable? Why does demanding transparency turn into an attack? And then we hit the real problem, minimizing victims. The language shift matters. When someone says so-called victims, that's not legal analysis. That's narrative framing. That plants doubt. That softens outrage. That subtly protects power. You don't have to be left, right, conservative, liberal. None of that matters. If children were trafficked, if crimes happened, then every single name involved should face scrutiny. Period. No political jersey, no loyalty discount. And what frustrates people, what genuinely angers people is the inconsistency. Europe sees resignations, titles stripped, careers ended. But in America, endless arguing, endless whataboutism, endless smoke. That's why this moment matters. Because the mask slips when pressure rises.
You sound at the idea that nobody else can be charged by this. There are 6 co-conspirators in the files that Congress has seen that are currently blocked off. You can't tell me that 1,000 little girls and boys were trafficked and nobody else.
And what the crimes
I don't know their names because they're concealing them in the files, Clay, because the Trump administration is covering this up.
Do you know what?
So you're telling me to tell you something that I don't know.
Time out. You know, the bottom line, Clay, is this. The best way to work out who should be prosecuted and who should be charged is for every one of these files to be released unredacted.
Transparency.
With the exception of the names of the victims. Hang on, with the exception of the names of the victims, right? So that everyone knows exactly who's been accused of what, and then everyone can determine who should potentially be prosecuted or not. Because they're going to keep back 3 million files, the suspicion will continue that this is a powerful
Here's what I would
cover-up.
say. Here's what I would say about that. All of the women who receive payments, and I believe they received about $120 million in payments from the Epstein estate after he died. All of them are free to go out and name exactly who they say assaulted them, who they say victimized them in any way. They have complete ability to do that. The so-called Epstein victims who have received over $100 million.
So-called Epstein victims. We should call that out for what that is. That's a bullshit
No,
line.
it's not. They are
So-called
saying
Epstein
that
victims.
they are Epstein victims and they have been paid. They can come out and say, no one is stopping them. I would welcome them. I would encourage them. Come out
This is
and tell
embarrassing
us.
Well, actually,
for you,
quite a
Clay.
few.
You should quit while you're
Hang on. Quite a few.
Okay,
but Clay, quite a few.
Charges there.
Quite
That
a few
seems
are
like
beginning to do that.
easy solution.
Quite a few are beginning to do that.
This
So
is
it's
the
going to be
Republican
interesting how
Party.
many more follow that path. Azai, what's your view of where we are with this scandal?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that this is a entire view of the Republican Party right here with Clay, the so-called Epstein victims. Look, ultimately, I think if the Republicans wanted to end this situation, they would call and join the millions of Americans that are saying that we want to see the unredacted Epstein files. 3 million files currently sit as we stand today that are redacted. And people want to see the truth. And the fact that you have MAGA running around carrying water for Trump, as Mike said, claiming that these victims are so-called victims or whatever it is, it's a shame to the American public. And it's why the Republican Party is losing trust all around this country. I think it's abundantly clear. It's why they're losing special elections everywhere we see, because of the fact that they are losing the trust of the American people. And I think that what Clay just said makes that abundantly clear.
I don't think that
Okay,
Republicans actually have any particular opinion. I'm sharing my opinion. I think actually the
You just said
majority
they
of
were
people
so-called
are just
Epstein
all
victims.
fed
You
up
said
with
so-called.
the Epstein situation in general. My position is, if you
They're
actually
fed
look
up?
at the evidence, I do not believe
Clay, wait a
that
second.
every
You said that
Democrat
they're
in
fed
power
up?
and every Republican in power conspired to cover up a bevy of charges that would otherwise have been brought. And by the way, if you
No,
want to make it a
Clay,
Democrat,
what people are fed up with, they're fed up with the fact that people are going in this country and they're carrying water for pedophiles in America. That's what they're fed up with,
are
Clay.
actually Democrat donors like Jeffrey Epstein. If you want to make it a Democrat-Republican issue, there are way
Clay,
more.
this is what's so insane about this situation. We have said from the very beginning that we support every single person that is inside of the Epstein files that has been assaulting children.
You know the truth.
We want to call them out. We want to see them prosecuted. That's what we say.
The truth is
that they're not going to charge
guys,
anybody.
the truth is, the Biden administration didn't release these files. The Trump administration promised to and hasn't released all the files. So the American people and the watching world, because it affects many other countries too, are looking on going, who is actually going to honor the claim to be transparent? And I think until there is proper transparency on this, this is going to go on and on and on and on. And actually, someone at some stage has to go, you know what? We're going to put it all out there, because until that happens, the conspiracy theories will rage. I want to move on. So
Here's the uncomfortable truth. This entire exchange exposed something bigger than one comment. It exposed the divide between transparency and tribal loyalty. Because once you start defending power automatically, once your first instinct is protection instead of investigation, you've already lost moral ground. Nobody is saying accuse without evidence. Nobody is saying skip due process. What people are saying loudly is release everything. Let the facts breathe. Let the sunlight hit it. If someone's innocent, transparency protects them. If someone's guilty, transparency exposes them. So why resist it? And think about the optics. Think about how this looks globally. Monarchies shaken, European figures stepping down, political careers collapsing. Meanwhile, in the United States, the most powerful country in the world, the debate is whether victims are even real. That's not strength, that's rot. And here's what really unsettles viewers. When powerful people circle the wagons, when questions are treated as betrayal, when loyalty is demanded instead of answers provided. That's how trust erodes. That's how institutions decay. Not overnight, but slowly, publicly, painfully. If transparency was the promise, then transparency should be delivered. Not selectively, not strategically, completely. Because every delay fuels suspicion. Every redaction feeds conspiracy. Every deflection deepens doubt. And here's the bottom line. This is not about left versus right. It's about whether powerful people face the same standard as everyone else. If you or I were implicated in something this serious, would the system move slowly or would it move immediately? Exactly. That's why moments like this matter. Because when someone casually says, so-called victims, it tells you everything about where their priorities are. And the public notices. The public always notices. Transparency ends the argument. Anything less keeps it alive. What do you think? Was that a fair defense or a complete collapse under pressure? Drop your thoughts below. Let's have the real conversation.